Welcome to this Indiana Professional Management Group informational webinar, Bullying Prevention, How You Can Make a Difference. I'm Patricia Levitt, Professional Development Specialist at IPMG. Before I introduce today's presenter, I'd like to share a few housekeeping items related to this session. First, webinar attendees will receive an email verifying their attendance one day after the webinar. IPMG employee owners should use this email as the certificate to upload for training credit. Also, the recording of this session will be posted to IPMG's website in the resources section in the next 3 to 4 business days. Finally, if you have a question during the session, we invite you to add it in the questions box. We will pause occasionally for time to answer some questions along the way in the presentation, and there may be time for answering a few questions at the end as well. Please be sure to add only general questions in the questions box. If you have specific questions about your case, you should reach out to your contact at IPMG. Now I am glad to tell you a little about our presenter for today's webinar. Sherri Cripe is the Assistant Director of MESA and the MESA School Bullying Prevention Director at Purdue University. MESA is a program dedicated to empowering communities and preventing violence across Indiana. With over 3 decades of experience as a teacher and administrator, Sherri has a rich history of collaborating with teachers, parents, and students to create safer educational environments. Sherri earned her undergraduate degree from Manchester College, followed by a master's degree in education from Indiana Wesleyan University. She holds both a principal's and superintendent's license and is currently a doctoral candidate at Indiana State University. In her role, Sherri is responsible for implementing the U.S. Department of Justice Stop School Violence grant. She works closely with rural and high-poverty schools across Indiana to address and prevent bullying. Outside of her professional work, Sherri enjoys traveling, reading, painting, playing euchre, and spending quality time with her family. Sherri, we're looking forward to hearing from you today. I'll let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patricia. I really appreciate that warm introduction. I'm thrilled to be here today to talk to you about something that I'm extremely passionate about. And I apologize, I did not advance your slides. I was so engrossed in what you were saying, I didn't do that. Okay, so today we're going to talk about bullying prevention, a topic that I am extremely passionate about. So as Patricia highlighted, that I have been an educator for 31 years. I retired and then had the awesome opportunity to go and work at Purdue in the College of Agriculture and work with schools across Indiana to continue to use my love and passion for education, but just in a different capacity. So I am a wife, I am a mother, I'm an educator, and I am a lifelong learner. I need to update this slide because I need to add on to this that I'm going to be a grandma for the first time in February. February 1st, we're going to have a grandson. So we are super excited. As she said, I love to read, and if you have not read Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt, I highly recommend it. I could recommend tons of books to you, but this is one of my absolute favorites. So my husband and I just took a trip to Germany, and it was my husband's first time being in Europe, but we went to see our foreign exchange student, Ava. She was with us 10 years ago. She's been back here a few times to visit, but we got to go over and explore Germany and her hometown with her and meet her family, which is absolutely incredible. As a family, we love to play games, and euchre's our absolute favorite. Whoops. So MESA, as they said, is an organization that's committed to community empowerment and preventing violence across Indiana. We work with a lot of marginalized communities and in particular migrant farm worker communities. So we work with communities to help provide safe environments through, education, through advocacy and outreach. And MESA's mission is to really be the voice for those who might not otherwise be heard. So today during the workshop, I want you to be able to identify what is bullying behavior, and that you will walk away with the knowledge and resources to help you in the event that one of your clients or your own children are being bullied, and what you can do and some steps you can take to safeguard them from bullying. And then also, if your child is being bullied, what you can do to support them. So I think it's important as we start this important conversation about bullying is that we understand what is bullying. So bullying is a behavior. And it's a behavior that is repeated or has the potential to be repeated. The one exception to that rule would be when we think of cyberbullying, and when someone takes an image, a photo, or even a screenshot of something, and especially in the case of a photo, an inappropriate photo, if you send that to someone, you then lose control of what happens with that image. So it has the potential to be sent over and over and over. So that's where typically the behavior is repeated. But in that situation, it has the potential to be repeated. Bullying is really about power. And so it involves real or perceived imbalances of power. So when we think about those power imbalances, oftentimes we think about what the media portrays in movies and such, like the real big football guy, the jock, and then the smaller kid that hasn't reached his growth spurt yet and is smaller, and you can see them putting him into the trash can or shoving them into a locker, meant to be funny. But I think all of us can think at times where we have seen that kind of image portrayed in movies and such. So that's one example of a power imbalance. Other power imbalances are not only size, but can also be age. An older kid versus a younger kid. Another power imbalance can be numbers, a group of kids, 2 kids against 1 kid, or 3, 4, 5 against 1. Another type of power imbalance can be within social hierarchies, within schools, within classrooms, within communities. And those power imbalances can be social structures such as, think back to those cliques when you were in school. Like when I was in school, one of those cliques was the athletes, the jocks. And then I was a band and theater kid. So, those were perceived as different social hierarchies within our class. So real or perceived. So some of those are kind of power imbalances. Another type of power imbalance that we can see is also socioeconomic status. A child of higher social or financial influence, and then a kid in poverty. Another type of power imbalance can be a child that has general intellect, and then a child that has special learning needs or has an IEP, a child that learns differently. So those can all be examples of real or perceived power imbalances within a community. Another part of that definition of what is bullying, besides, is it a repeated behavior that's ongoing? What about, is it a real or perceived power imbalance? Is also the intent behind the behavior. Is the intent to harm, humiliate, embarrass, make them feel less than. And then the other side to that is, how is it impacting the student, the child? Is it making them have low self-esteem, not want to go to school? Is it affecting their mental health? What is that impact? So that is the definition of bullying. Sometimes, going through all of that and then that legal side of the definition is really complex. So I like to break it down for kids so that they can understand what it means with the simple acronym BOO. So B, being mean on purpose, over and over and over. This really helps kids, in their own mind think, oh, is this really bullying? Boo, being mean on purpose over and over. So the different types of bullying. There is physical bullying, and that's very easily identifiable. It is where someone puts their hands on someone else, hitting, tripping, pinching, slapping, pulling hair, things like that. But that doesn't only pertain to someone's physical body. That also translates over into their physical possessions. If someone, back in the day when I was in school and they used to collect money, excuse me, my allergies are horrible, so I apologize. Back when they used to collect lunch money, kids would take lunch money. That would be a form of bullying. If someone is stealing possessions, taking their backpack, damaging their phones, taking their school computer, things like that. Those are all still examples of physical bullying. Verbal bullying is using words to hurt others. And verbal bullying is sometimes really hard to recognize because adults around don't always catch it. Kids can be really, really sneaky. And so the adults there don't hear it. The other type of bullying is social, relational, or emotional bullying. I always think back to when I was a teacher, and I would have students have clubs at recess, and they would be like, well, you can't be in my club for whatever reason. That's an example of social, relational, emotional bullying. Ostracizing someone, not allowing them to be a part of the group. Another example of this is manipulating someone. I often hear when I talk to kids in schools that they say, well, they said that if I'm their friend, they can't be friends with someone else. That is an example of this type of bullying, that manipulation and control. As kids get older, we often see this move into dating relationships where there's more control of that, and almost like stalking type behavior where they're monitoring where they're at, what they're doing. Those are all examples of social, emotional, relational bullying. The one that we're seeing a huge increase in is cyberbullying. And that is bullying that takes place on any kind of technology device. We're seeing a huge increase as kids are getting more cell phones, younger and younger. And then also in gaming, online gaming, the new thing, the popular thing, if you have kids, you know this, they have headphones. And in those headphones, they can communicate with others playing the game through a group chat. And there's a lot of cyberbullying occurring in those spaces. So sometimes we don't know at what point in time with cyberbullying do we involve the police in what is happening with our children. So first of all, if there is a threat of violence against your child, whether it's said verbally or if it's through a text message, a snap, something on social media, that is when you contact the police. And we're going to talk more about some steps you can take later in the presentation in collecting that evidence. The other time you must call the police is if child pornography or sending sexually explicit messages or photos, that's sexting or sexual exploitation, definitely contact the police. The other time, if there is a photo or a video taken in a place where someone expects privacy, that's called voyeurism. And this actually happened to someone close to our family. She was at a family member's house and was going to go into the restroom, and someone there, a male, had said, "Hey, do you mind? I need to go in and wash my hands. Can I go before you go in?" And she said, "Sure." So he went in and was in there a little bit, came back out. She went in, and of course, as any teenager is standing in front of the mirror, texting, looking at herself, and puts her phone down, and she turns around to use the restroom and happens to notice sitting in the corner of the tub is a cell phone, and that person's cell phone. And so she looks and picks it up, sees that it's recording. She stops the recording, forwards it to herself and her dad. I thought, man, what, fantastic thinking skills she had at the moment, and deleted it off of that person's phone, and then put it back, walked out of the bathroom and went straight to her dad, and they called the police. And so she did the right thing, emailing it to herself and her father, so they had the evidence to show the police. So, those types of things should not happen where someone expects privacy, a locker room, a bathroom, things of that nature. Also, the other time you need to contact the police is with stalking and hate crimes. If someone is bullying someone over the color of their skin or their religion, that escalates to a different level of bullying, and you need to involve the police at that point. There have been some changes in bullying law. So in 2013, then Governor Mike Pence instituted the anti-bullying legislation in Indiana. And so that in that bill, House Enrollment Act 1423, it outlines some things that schools must do as part of that anti-bullying legislation. Every year, the school must provide bullying prevention training. That's one of the things that MESA does through our office. And I have trained tons of teachers around the state of Indiana. Excuse me. The other thing that the law outlines that schools must do is to provide bullying prevention instruction every year in grades 1 through 12 by October 15th of every year. Now, the reason you may think, well, why isn't kindergarten in there? Why is the law just 1st through 12? Well, in Indiana, kindergarten is not mandatory. Kids do not have to start school until 5th grade. However, schools provide bullying prevention instruction to kindergarten as well. So it's actually K to 12, but the law outlines 1st through 12th grade. Schools should also have an anonymous reporting and personal reporting system in place. You can often find those on your school websites. Go to the corporation webpage. And if you can't find it, go up to the search bars and put in bullying reporting. I look when I work with schools, and sometimes that's how I have to go about finding it. Also, the other thing that's outlined in the law is that the principal counselor needs to respond and investigate bullying allegations, all of them. Now, the part of this, though, is they cannot, as the parent, always tell you the outcome of that bullying investigation because of FERPA. FERPA is just like HIPAA when you go to the doctor and they can't share information about you. The same thing is true in education. We are bound by those FERPA laws. So you have to trust in the fact, even though you may not know the outcome, that they have to, by law, investigate that. And then the other part of that anti-bullying legislation is that by July 1st of every year, all schools in Indiana must report their bullying data to the Indiana Department of Education. Now, this had been enacted since 2013. In July of 2023, there was some new bullying legislation enacted. After 10 years, they updated and made, in my opinion, the bullying legislation better. And so now there's a timetable that when you report a bullying incident to your school administrator, the teacher, the counselor, whomever you report to, they have 3 days then to inform the parents or guardians of the targeted student, the one who is being bullied. They have to notify you within 3 days. On the other side, they must, after investigating and finding out if it's truly a bullying situation, they must inform the parents of the student doing the bullying behavior within 5 days. So I think that is a really positive change in the law. The other thing that schools must do, their governing body, their school board, must include false reporting discipline language in their discipline handbook. So if someone falsely reports bullying, what is the consequence to that? And I love this part. Follow-up services for the targeted and the bullying students. I remember when I was a principal, I always made sure that the child that was being bullied would meet with the counselor, or if they qualified for outside services through like a mental health agency, that I made sure that they, had services, and then I would meet with them 1 day a week, just as a check-in to make sure everything was going okay. There was no retaliatory type behavior. Well, when it came to the student doing the bullying, I would go to the handbook and look at what the consequence was, according to our disciplinary policy. And I would, do whatever was outlined in the handbook and was appropriate for that behavior at that time. Well, I wish I knew then what I know now, because now I know that behavior is communication, and hurt kids hurt kids. I wish now that I would have, done the same types of things for the child doing the bullying and got behind the why. Why are you doing this? Is this happening to you? Why? So the law has now required that the schools provide follow-up services for not only the student that is being targeted, but also the student or students doing the bullying behavior, that both gets support. The other thing that I want you to be aware of that's outlined in this law, that schools must allow parents the opportunity to see any bullying and suicide prevention materials that they use or provide to the students. So through our grant, through the Department of Justice, our partner schools, we provide the second step bullying prevention units. And one of the things I love about that curriculum is the fact that there are home links that the teachers can send home, and the school can excuse me, they can put that information out on their school website, so it's accessible to you. So with the home links, and there's even a little code that you can put in and have your own family access, where there's activities and things that you can use to extend what the kids are learning in school. So I think this is a wonderful way to communicate, so parents are aware of what the kids are learning at school, so they can also support that at home, using the same language that the teachers in the school is using. Oops. The other thing that is in this law, and when they first wrote it, it said shall, but they changed it towards the end to may. It, depending upon the severity of the situation, and there's discretion at the school for this, that depending upon the severity of the incident, the school may warrant the transfer of the student being bullied or the alleged perpetrator to another school within the corporation. Now, the problem being, a lot of the schools I work with, they're small rural schools. There are no other schools in the corporation. So I'm really glad that they changed that to may, so that it gives them some latitude there to be able to enforce this or enact this. So that's another thing that you as the parent may decide that this has gone too far, and it, excuse me, may be better for my child to attend a different school, get a clean slate where nobody knows them. So according to the research, I'm a researcher, so you're going to hear some statistics from me because I love statistics. But 1 in every 5 student reports having been bullied. This is from the National Center for Educational Statistics. However, I believe that this is not an accurate reflection of what's truly occurring in our schools. I think that this number is much higher. And the reason I think that one of the reasons I think this number is much higher is because, according to other research, only 1 in 10 students will inform a parent or a trusted adult about the bullying behavior. And research further supports that the older the child gets, the less likely they are to tell someone. So they're more likely when they're in elementary, middle school. Probably the older into high school, they typically don't say anything. So additional research, and this is, as a former teacher, administrator, this is heartbreaking to me, but 160,000 kids refuse to go to school every day for fear of being bullied. That's not okay. Our kids have the right to learn in an environment where they feel safe and included, where they feel that they have a sense of belonging. So, we're still, as educators, trying to make up that gap from COVID, that gap in learning that occurred. And when you have that many kids absent from school, that's a huge problem. So the other thing that is also concerning to me, and I talk a lot about this when I talk with kids in school, 75% of bullying behavior is not even recognized as bullying. It's like, oh, well, they're just having fun. They're just teasing. I was just kidding. Can't they take a joke? So that's huge. So I really try to educate kids on what is the difference between bullying and what is the difference between teasing, and when does it step over that line. The hope is that research also says that when bystanders become upstanders and they stand up and they intervene on behalf of the student being bullied, when that happens, 70% of the time, bullying stops. So that is very encouraging to me. And so that's why it's important that our kids know what to do, how to intervene, how to stand up respectfully to get bullying to stop. So remember, I told you that the Department of Education is required by law by July 1st of every year to report their bullying data. This is the bullying data from the DOE from 2023-2024. So it's broken down by categories. The one thing that they do that I like is the fact that not always does bullying behavior fit into one nice, neat silo, that it's just physical or it's just verbal. Excuse me. Sometimes they cross over into other categories. So the DOE also tracks combination incidences, that it's more than one type of bullying per incident. So maybe it was verbal, but then also with cyber as well. So you can see that physical bullying is 31%, happens 31% of the time. That does not surprise me, that number, because physical bullying is more easily identifiable. You can see when physical bullying is happening, and there are marks, bruises, torn clothes, things that indicate that this behavior happened. Verbal, they're doing a better job catching it. 43% of the reports were verbal, using, mean words, calling names, teasing, that kind of thing. And then the social relational bullying at 10%, and then the cyberbullying at 8%. That surprises me a little, but a lot of times the cyberbullying behavior, the school only addresses that when it spills into the school and starts to interfere with learning. So a lot of those cyberbullying things are either not being reported, or it's being taken care of through the social media site. The parents are taking care of it outside. So this is the trend data. We have been tracking data since the anti-bullying legislation was enacted in 2013. And so if you look across, at the bottom are the totals of bullying incidents over all categories. So if you look that first year, it was quite high, expectedly. It was new and people were hyper vigilant. But then as you look over time, it becomes a little bit stagnant until 2021, it drops drastically. So if you remember, in 2021, that was during the pandemic. So not all schools were in school. A lot of people were doing learning. So that impacted that number. And then now you can see it starting to trend back up. Again, just like when it was first enacted, we have this new revision to the law in July of 2023. So I believe that impacted those numbers for it to be higher. This can be found at the Indiana Department of Education. Just go into the website and type in bullying report, and it'll take you to this data. So still, sometimes we went over that definition of what is bullying. Well, sometimes, we're still not sure. So when someone does something one time unintentionally, they're walking through the hallway and they bump into you, but they don't say they're sorry, and you're really not sure, but they just do it that one time. Well, that's just them being rude. I really encourage kids that when something like that happens, that you automatically say, oh, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And then you're very clear that that was unintentional. So then, though, if someone is upset and does something intentionally to hurt you, says something, but they do it just that one time, that's just them being mean. It's just like my sister. My sister called me Karen one time. I was like, what? Karen? You're just being mean. Don't say that to me. Well, she stopped then. She never called me that again. So she was upset with me. So she called me Karen. So that was just a mean behavior when they do it intentionally to be hurtful, but just do it once. So when does it switch over from being rude and being mean to bullying? Well, that is when someone intentionally hurts someone and they keep doing it repeatedly, even when you've told them to stop. They can tell that it upset you. That's when it becomes bullying. So after, my sister called me Karen, had she continued to do that over and over and continue to call me Karen, even after I had said, hey, that's not nice. Why did you call me that? That hurt my feelings. Stop. Had she continued, that would have been bullying behavior. So, conflict. A lot of our kids and adults do not know how to handle conflict. So this is something that I like to talk to parents about, and I talk to the kids about this. Because at some point in time, how do you know whether something is a conflict or whether it's truly bullying? I always think back to when I was a principal and I had these two boys, highly competitive, very athletic, and it didn't matter what they were playing at recess, basketball, foursquare, kickball, that they would get into a disagreement over the game. And so there was this one particular time they were playing kickball at recess. And the one, I called them frenemies. Sometimes they were friends, sometimes they were enemies. But anyway, the one was up and he kicked the ball and went flying out into the outfield. So he takes off running to first base. So he gets to first base and he rounds first base, looks, and the ball's still out in the outfield. So he takes off, run into second base. And just as he gets there, his frenemy gets the ball, puts his foot on the bag, tags him, and says, "You're out." And he's like, "No, I wasn't. I was safe." He's like, "No, you were out." An argument ensues. And it gets heated, it gets escalated, and they made the bad decision to put their hands on one another. So they end up in my office. So I interview the boys separately. I mean, clearly this is a disagreement. They were having an argument over one, clearly thought he was out, and the other clearly thought that he was safe. So then I had to look at, was there a power imbalance? No, they were the same age. They were in the same grade. They were the same size. They played on the same AAU basketball team, the same baseball team. They often spent the night at one another's house. So there was no, power imbalance there, real or perceived. So then the next part was, did they stop or change the behavior when they realized it was hurting someone? So after I interviewed them and they were switching, because I did it individually, they passed one another in my doorway to my office. And without me even saying this, one looked at the other and said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have hit you." And he's like, "I know, I'm sorry too." He goes, "It's just a game and I'm sorry." I was like, okay, so this is clearly, when we look at bullying behavior, the goal was not, they did not set out to hurt one another, to harm them. One did not have more power over the other. And then in a bullying situation, the behavior doesn't stop. It continues, even when they realize that the other person is being hurt. So in this situation, the boys truly were sorry. And that was indicated to me by the fact that they apologized without me even telling them to. So to me, this was conflict. This was not a situation of bullying. The boys needed to learn conflict management and anger management, what to do when they get angry. They're both athletes. They have to learn what to do and how to handle themselves when they're out playing basketball or baseball and they don't agree with a call that's being made. If they throw a fit or get mad at the referee or the umpire and yell at them or put their hands on another player, they're going to be ejected from the game and they're going to become uncoachable. So sometimes we just have to really break it down and look at that. Is this a conflict or is this bullying? Was their goal to hurt or harm or humiliate someone? Was there a power imbalance? And then did the person continue the behavior when they realized it was hurting that person or when they're asked to stop? In a bullying situation, they almost get kind of a pleasure from making someone feel less than because they're elevating themselves in power. So that's the difference between conflict and bullying. Now we look at teasing. You remember I told you that statistic that 75% of the time people think, oh, they're just teasing, oh, they're just kidding, and they dismiss it when it truly is bullying. Well, in a teasing situation, everyone's having fun. The roles can switch. Different people can be saying things, making jabs. The kids call it roasting one another. Everyone's laughing. And if it goes too far, or someone says, hey, stop, or, they walk away, or you can tell by their body language they've went too far, it stops. Now, on the flip side, in a bullying situation, it's one-sided, usually one-sided. One person is doing the digs, the put downs, the roast, and they're doing it on purpose to make someone feel less than, to put them down. And even if it's not the person it's happening to, if someone in the group says, hey, stop, you've gone too far, they won't stop. They just continue. And they can tell that it's upsetting someone. They don't care. It continues. And then it's also that power imbalance, because it's then, that group imbalance where one person, and it's one-sided doing the bullying. So that's the difference. It's a fine line at times. And so this is one of the things I talk to the kids about in a teasing versus bullying situation. And it's always good to follow up afterwards to make sure that they're okay. I love to share this book with parents and teachers. This was a book that my school counselor introduced to me when I was a teacher. It's called Tattle and Madeline. It's no longer in print. It's the first book I bought my daughter when she became a teacher. But you can find this on YouTube if you put in YouTube, Tattle and Madeline. There's this lovely lady who reads it and goes through the book. So it really does a great job of breaking down what is tattling behavior and what is reporting. So really, tattling, it goes behind the intent behind it. Are you trying to get someone else in trouble? Are you trying to seek attention for yourself? Or it teaches them what reporting is and when to report, when a person's being hurt or has the potential of being hurt, or when property is being damaged. So this is a great tool to use when working with your kids, especially, if they're tattling on siblings and things. Fantastic tool, highly recommended. So what are some warning signs? You think perhaps maybe your child's being bullied, but you're not sure. So do they have unexplained injuries, cuts, bruises that you're not sure where they came from? They come home and they've lost school supplies, or they've lost things and really don't have an explanation or don't want to explain to you what happened to it. These pseudo illnesses where it's time to go to school and they're like, oh, I have a stomach ache, or I don't feel good, I don't want to go to school today. That's a warning sign. They have anxiety about going to school. They may not be able to sleep. They may not eat. They may want to skip meals. Or the other side, they come home from school, their lunchbox, they haven't eaten anything, or they come home absolutely starved. Start asking some questions, open-ended questions, not just yes, no questions. And then if they're, starting to have nightmares and things, these are all, things that are red flags for you to dig a little deeper. Also, if their grades if their grades start to decline, they lose interest in something they once loved. Maybe they once loved to play basketball and loved the basketball team, and they suddenly want to quit or don't want to go or have anxiety. Start asking questions. They have a loss of friends. They maybe once they were doing something with, several people, and all of a sudden, they don't talk about it anymore. They don't want to spend time with them. They don't want to invite them over or hang out or play at the park. They avoid certain situations. If they start expressing feelings of helplessness, or you're noticing that their self-esteem has been impacted, they're talking down about themselves, or not as confident as they once were. And then another thing that oftentimes happens when kids are harboring this is they start doing self-destructive type behavior, running away from home, cutting, and then even talking about wanting to harm themselves. So you may be thinking, I'm a good parent. Why aren't they coming to me? Why didn't they tell me? That's the thing when parents talk to me, they always carry such guilt. Parent teacher conferences just happened, and I had several family members and some friends reach out and be like, my teacher actually said my son was bullying someone. And I'm like, first of all, take a deep breath. It's okay. It is not a reflection upon you and your parenting. They're growing, they're making choices, they're learning how to navigate this, and they're going to make mistakes. And so we're there to guide them. So part of the reason why they may not tell you is because they're embarrassed. They don't want you to be ashamed of them because they feel bad. This is particularly true with teenagers who have shared inappropriate photos. They may have been coaxed or, really pressured by someone they like to send an inappropriate photo. And then they're completely mortified and embarrassed, and they don't want to tell you that. And then they're afraid, that you may take their phone or, whatever that consequence may be. So there are a lot of reasons why your kids may not tell you. Another huge reason I hear from kids is because they're afraid they're going to retaliate. So you have to reassure them. And if that does happen, they need to come back to you. You need to report it back to the school. I often hear that they're just afraid that it will make it worse. And some kids desire acceptance in their social group. And so they'll put up with a little bit of not teasing, excuse me. They'll put up with a little bit of bullying just to be accepted. A lot of times kids are afraid nobody's going to believe me. That kid's popular. They're parents on the school board. They're high, visibly in the community. They're not going to believe me. Or they're worried about being called a snitch. And I hear a lot, snitches get stitches. So we really have to do a lot to debunk that and stop that. Sometimes they don't tell us because they think it's not going to help. They just feel so overwhelmed that this isn't going to help. And then sometimes they don't know how to report it, especially in the case of cyberbullying. The kids hide behind fake profiles, and they're not even really sure at times who it is. So they don't know how to report. But how can you help them? So my best advice is to you is build a relationship of trust with your kids where they feel comfortable talking to you. And that's not something you start when they're teenagers. That is something you start when they're young, and you build that relationship where, you can talk to me about anything, all your problems. Have those conversations with your kids regularly. Look for signs that they're being bullied. Do they have bruises? Do they have scrapes? Has there been a change of behavior? You know your kids better than anyone. Are they having anxiety that they didn't used to have and fear of different situations? Make sure that another way you can help is to notify the school immediately in writing of any bullying complaints, any information. Don't ignore it. Please do not downplay the importance of it. Listen, take notes, and get as much information as you can and report it. Remember, according to the law, the school they are legally obligated to investigate all reports of bullying. So what else can you do? So the most critical thing, and I tell teachers this, administrators this, and now I'm telling you the most critical part is, first and foremost, make sure your child is safe. Make sure that they feel safe. And then take a deep breath. Stay calm, because I'll tell you what, those are our babies, and our mama and Papa Bear comes out and you just are angry. because how dare someone hurt your most precious thing, your child? So take a deep breath. You may need to step away for a moment to collect yourself. You know, I was myself a survivor of bullying. And so these types of things trigger our own, you know, past traumas, perhaps. So make sure that you stay calm, listen, and focus in on what they're saying. And if you're not sure about something that they're saying, ask clarifying questions and just show empathy. Sometimes, you know, depending upon the age of your kids, you just need to ask, what do you need from me? Do you need my help? Do you need me to listen? Or do you just need me to give you a hug? So if your child's being bullied at school, this is what you need to do. You need to contact the teacher, or depending upon the situation, the school counselor, and then the school principal. And if you're not hearing, because they should get back to you, remember, within 3 or 5 days, depending upon, you know, if it's the victim or the alleged perpetrator. If you don't hear things, then you need to follow up the chain, what we call school language chain of command. Go from the principal to the superintendent. And if the school is not responding, then you can contact the Indiana Department of Education. Whoops, what is happening? So there we go. Keep your records. Document everything. Get as much information about the bullying incident, the date that happened, any kids that witnessed it, anyone that was around. Write down their names, even if it's just the first name. Write down your child's account of what happened. And then keep all the communication you have with the school. If you email, that's good because there's a date and a timestamp on it. But keep a copy of that. Start a file. If you call, write it down and do a little synopsis of the conversation between you and the counselor, or you and the principal, or you and the teacher. Date the communication, the date and the time, and then a summary of the discussion. Remember, bullying behavior is repeated and ongoing. And if it gets to the point where you have to involve the police, then you have this file of, I contacted them here, here, here. And that helps your case. I always say, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So my advice is to keep calm and document absolutely everything. So bullying behavior, yes.
I'm sorry, Sherri. I have a question that I thought maybe we could, you could take a minute to answer, and then I know that we're getting towards the end here. So I wanted to make sure that we got to this because I do think it is a really good question. They're asking, how is verbal or social relational bullying addressed in the schools when that bullying comes from an adult, either a coach or a teacher? How is there anything in place to address that?
Absolutely. The thing of it is, when it involves a teacher or a coach, they will address it. It has to be investigated as well. But when it comes to a personnel matter, as a former administrator, we cannot talk about personnel matters with parents because of privacy. But yes, they do. You need to report those situations, whether if it's a coach to the athletic director, and have specific, examples and times of things that happen. I just worked with a school corporation last spring on that very thing and helped them put language in place, because it happened to be a situation with a male and a female situation, and they were interviewing the girl with males, and I'm like, no, you can't do that. You need to interview females with a female person, whether it's a trusted teacher, someone they choose, or a female counselor. But yeah, definitely report those, and they will do things. It's just unfortunate. It's really hard because we won't know the outcome because of personnel privacy.
Sure.
Yeah.
That is good to know. I did have one other, it's not a question, but we had an attendee enter, in case anybody finds this to be interesting. The author of the Remarkably Bright Creatures that you talked about, the book at the beginning, she is actually going to be at Purdue University in Westville, Indiana, on April the 24th, 2025. And she has shared a link to that, and I can put that in the, I think that people can see it in the question section since it was answered. But we could also share that if anybody's interested in that. So, but thank you for answering that. And just, we have about 5 minutes or so left, but I'll let you go on.
Okay, well, that's exciting. I'm going to have to look that up. I know that.
Yes.
Okay, so real quick, I want to give you some resources. First of all, make sure that your child knows this is not their fault. They're not to blame. They're not alone. You're there to help them. And as adults, and I tell the kids this all the time, bullying is bigger than you. And it is our responsibility as adults to help you through this and to make bullying stop. And it's never, ever okay for someone to be bullied, and everyone has the right to feel safe, and everyone deserves the right to be respected. So make sure your child knows that. Some mistakes to avoid: never tell your child to just ignore it. Just ignore it. It'll go away. Oftentimes that, is kind of fuel on the fire. It'll make it worse. Don't blame the child for being bullied. And please, please, please do not tell the child to fight back. Violence does not solve violence. That is something I hear often. And then also, this is the other thing, I have seen this go so badly, where parents contact the other parents. And I actually had 2 of my fathers, when I was an administrator, both get arrested because they got into a physical altercation over a bullying situation. So please, please, please resist that urge to contact the parents. So bullying, if it goes unaddressed, can result in depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, poor body image. It can lead to eating disorders and suicidal ideation. So please seek help for your child. You may need to seek professional help or through a religious organization that you're connected to. I want to give you, I'm going to skip over some of this. Unfortunately, I ran out of time, but this is a fantastic website that I wanted to share with you. It's smartsocial.com. Tons of information for parents that, now I will tell you, when you go here, it's going to ask you to be a member. I am not a member, and I get tons of information on here. So when you go there, and you go to resources, you click that drop down menu, look at all of these resources that you can get for free. And it really helps you, like with video games and things that are happening online that we just, through cyberbullying, that we can't, stay abreast of. So this is one of my favorite resources. So here is also a QR code if you have your phone and want to snap this. This can help you know different apps and games, whether they're green, good, or if they're red, they're not good, or even dangerous, especially TikTok and TikTok challenges. So fantastic resource. And then I want to tell you, on Netflix, there is a phenomenal show called The Social Dilemma. I highly recommend that you watch it. It's about social media and the impact of social media upon our communities. And then the other one is, and this should not be watched with kids, but this is very enlightening to what our kids are dealing with social media. Most of us, our parents, are not sure how to parent through that because we didn't grow up with it. So this is through YouTube, but I put a QR code there to take you to the right one. Very, very good. It's about an hour and a half long movie. My husband and I watched it together. I really, really recommend it. And so then the best thing you can do, we're almost out of time, but the best thing you can do is to teach your kids empathy. You know, that does a lot in preventing bullying. And these are some books that will support that. And then the other thing is teach your kids to be kind and model kindness. What kind of words are you using? Are you making jokes at someone? You see someone that's overweight, are you making fun of their appearance? So really, they're watching. So be a good model of that. And these are great, great books to teach kindness. And finally, this is a book prevention list. I'm an educator and I love to read. So I like to share this resource with parents. These are books that are from pre-K all the way to 12th grade. It tells you what age it's for and a little synopsis of the book. So you can get your phones and scan that. So with that, thank you all so much. Great questions for the few. Thank you about the Shelby Van Pelt visit. I'm going to check that out. But this has been great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Sherri. I did want to tell everybody that I put the information about the Shelby Van Pelt evening in the chat, so you can look there. There's also a link to the website for that. We have one last question. It's actually a follow-up from the previous question, just asking, you know, if the school is not able to discuss personnel issues such as like any discipline or corrective action or anything like that that would be taken against the adult school employee, how can a parent then be assured that it's being addressed? What would you suggest in that situation, since, you know, can't talk about any kind of personnel issue when the school is addressing that with the coach or the teacher, but how can a parent be assured that the school is actually addressing the concerns?
Yeah, great question. So what I would recommend in that situation is to set up a meeting with the principal and or athletic director and just sit down and say, hey, this is my concern. I understand for privacy reasons, you cannot share with me any corrective actions, or you cannot share with me any discipline measures. What can you share with me to know where I feel comfortable knowing you have investigated my concern? What can you share with me? And that will put it back on them to be able to tell you what they can without what the outcome of that would be. Now, you know, in communities, sometimes you'll be able to tell what happened without them telling you, but they, you know, sometimes you'll see a suspension or a change in position, or maybe they're gone for a period of time, a few days, maybe a suspension that they received without them being able to tell you that specifically. So kind of be mindful, go to school board meetings, but then ask them what they can share, because they will. And, you know, hopefully you have that kind of trust built with your school leadership, that they've, you know, it's not the first time they've seen you, that they know you, and that you trust that they're doing what's best for kids. Because 99.9% of the time, the people I work, well, I think people in education just want to do what's best for kids. So you want to trust that that's what they're doing. They're doing what's best for your child. Yeah, that's how I would handle it. And also the other thing I would really, you know, keep your emotions, in check. If you go in there hot and angry and cursing, you're not going to get they're going to be on guard. And so, also approach it, take a little bit of time so your emotions are not heated. And just, ask them, what can you tell me about understanding? You can't tell me the outcome, but what can you tell me?
Very good advice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Sherri, for such a great informative presentation. We also appreciate everyone who took time to join us and learn more about how to identify and prevent bullying and ask questions in the question box. This is our last informational webinar for 2024, so please keep an eye out for future learning opportunities via IPMG communication channels in the new year. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.